So going back to, do you agree that men do most of the most difficult and needed jobs in society?
No.
Okay. How would society keep running without men doing the infrastructure jobs like logging, fishing, trucking?
Oh, do
Amaz-
you mean like in the world wars when men left and women took over those positions and we ran the entire country and took over the jobs that you say that we couldn't do?
no, they didn't take over the majority of the jobs.
We did.
They did. They took over factory positions.
We took over the positions that
They
men
were not
left.
they were not doing the electrical, they were not doing the plumbing, they were not building the buildings, they were not
There are
paving the
women
roads.
electricians, there are women plumbers, like there are females in all of these positions. There are
Is it the
female.
majority?
No, because
Okay, so it's not the
historically,
majority.
because you have to take into the historical
Mhm.
perspective.
What is stopping a woman today from being a plumber and electrician?
As I said, discrimination.
Why there's
Hostile workplaces, because they are made to feel as if they don't belong in those spaces. And why would you want to exist in a space where you're constantly made to feel like you shouldn't be there by the men in those positions? So men will make women feel like they don't belong there and then complain that women aren't there. So
what's your evidence for that?
what's my evidence
Yeah,
for
what's
that?
your evidence for that?
Oh, they've studied it. They've studied like workplace discrimination.
With women in
Yeah, in
electrical,
male-dominated fields. Yeah.
and they've said that the women feel like they're not wanted. And that's
Yes.
why they're not doing it.
Not just not
That's
wanted, not welcome.
That's very convenient. You know, here's the thing. Men don't care if they're not welcomed. They don't expect people to just accept them into a group like women do, because again, men live in the real world. Women do not. We live in this play pretend world where we're given more credit for what we actually do than we do.
So I've seen you speak many times about the detrimental effects that all of these things have on men's mental health, and that they have a higher rate of suicide, they have all these things. And so I think that it's really interesting that you care a lot, seemingly, about men's mental health, but then at the same time you'll say, oh, men don't care if you're mean to them, men don't care if they're not welcomed. You say all of these things that have an impact on men's mental health. So I think to care about one, you have to recognize how it impacts the other.
What I'm saying is men understand that that's the real world, and they know there's nothing they can do to change that. Women go into a man's world and they expect to be given special treatment and privileges. They expect to be the new guy in a company and feel welcome. I mean, it's not abnormal for men to haze somebody in a new group. You might say that's wrong, but it's not abnormal, and they don't complain, they don't strike, they don't protest. They just accept it, and they accept the world as it is instead of doing a wish list that will never become true.
I mean, do they really accept it, and are they really okay with it when the statistics behind men's mental health proves that it does impact them? They just internalize it. Women make sure that we prioritize empathy and communication. So when we feel like we're not being welcomed, when we feel like we're being wronged, we want to improve the communication to improve the circumstance.
We're better at complaining.
I would say we're better at communication.
We're better at complaining about the stuff we don't like, where men don't complain. That's what I said.
Right. They don't complain because they internalize it. And then instead they just unalive themselves. That's not a proper coping strategy. They don't complain
because the world doesn't give them sympathy. Young women get a ton of sympathy on the internet complaining about their problems. It's why they're given 10 times the funding for breast cancer research instead of prostate cancer. It's because people care about women's issues. People do not care about men's issues.
I disagree.
Why?
Why do I disagree?
You could say you disagree, but that's not an argument.
I mean, your arguments are just like, oh, that's silly and I live in reality. Like, you're not giving me any realistic responses either.
Well, I'm giving you realistic responses. I said men do the majority of infrastructure jobs. They're the majority of workplace deaths. And so based on those two stats, they have a harder work environment and they complain less.
Yeah.
If you look at the industries that strike and complain, it tends to be female-dominated industries because women are better at complaining.
No,
they want to do less of the work and they want more of the credit.
We care about how we're treated, as men should care how they're treated. And they do care, they just internalize it. Just because they don't take action doesn't mean that they don't care.
So the next topic I think we're going to go into is, do you think society discriminates more against men or women, or do you think it's equal?
I think that they discriminate more against women, but that's not to say that men aren't discriminated against in some aspects.
Okay, how are women more discriminated against?
As I've said before, in my own personal experience and statistically.
Other than, can we do something other than just people say mean words to me? Because men, by the time they're 22, somebody said a mean word to them. Usually it's a woman. So anything other than somebody said something I don't like.
Bans. Can you name a law that controls what men can do and access healthcare and the healthcare that men can access? Is there any laws that control men's healthcare access?
Well, if you want to talk about men's body, men are required to go into selective service. So if there is a wartime, they are required to be drafted.
Yeah, and I think that the draft should be abolished.
So you asked for a law, there's a law. There's a way that women's bodies aren't protected. There's a way men's bodies aren't protected.
No, so it was actually, my question was different. My question was, can you name a law that restricts men's access to healthcare?
That restricts men's access to healthcare? No, not off the top of my head.
So there you go. That's one discriminatory
practice. How are women
practice.
Restricted access to healthcare? You can drive to another state and get an abortion.
Yeah, well, then that's also not taking into account like socioeconomic factors, right? Because not every person has the ability or the funds or the time to be able to just cross state lines to gain access. We shouldn't have different healthcare access in different states. Your geographical location should not determine your access to a human right.
Okay. Well, again, luckily for women, we have access to birth control, abstinence, and even you can even track your cycle and not get pregnant. So I think there's plenty of options beforehand that it really isn't an excuse if you have an unplanned pregnancy.
So actually about 50% of unplanned pregnancies used protection. And so that's just an incorrect statement.
Then you should learn to use it better.
That's not how that works.
The other thing is after the kid's born, you could argue that it's an equally irresponsible move when men and women have unprotected sex or there's some problem with the birth control. Fine, equally irresponsible. But after the woman has more control, she has the right to she's the only one who gets to decide if she takes a plan B. She's the only one that gets to decide to put him on child support or alimony if they're married. Men don't have a right to their wallets after the kid is born.
Yeah, so pregnancy involves your body and your internal organs, and that is worth more than any money.
Yeah, but that's 9 months, a year. What about the rest of the time? What about 18 years after?
Right, and so then there's like 2 years after that you're breastfeeding, and then there's the unequal division of childcare and domestic labor. So it's so much more than 9 months. But to go back, we cannot minimize that 9 months. Having your body be not your own for 9 months is 9 months too long.
Yeah, but there are men dying when they go and do their jobs. And
they can get a different job.
They're not complaining about it.
They can get a different job.
No, because men understand that somebody has to do it.
Yeah, they don't have to do it.
They understand. Well, that's why it's admirable that they do it anyway and they don't complain. And that's what I keep going back to is what feminists tend to want is they want all of the credit and they want to over exaggerate their problems.
So I would actually like to go back to the comparison you made of pregnancy and men going to work. Do you think those two things are the same?
I think that a man going to a dangerous job is far worse than a woman being pregnant.
And do you think that the majority of
men far more dangerous, I'll say. That's more accurate. Better and good is like, it's subjective, right?
Yeah. And as I've said before, I think that we should have better safety protocols and we should improve the safety of all workers. So I think that should be addressed. But also majority of men...
but it isn't, right? Like,
right, but are you arguing for it to be?
Here's the difference, okay? So feminists have a tendency to think that if we complain, things will just happen. And I'm more realistic, where I know that just because we say, oh, it should be better, well, it's not. And men understand that because they have had to deal with that reality from a young age.
You recognize that the only reason you have a microphone and you have a show is because feminists complained because we wanted a voice.
That's not true.
It actually is.
It's not true. There was female writers in the 1800s, 1700s,
and they had to write under male pseudonyms.
It's not true.
It is true.
It's not true.
Well, you can say it's not true, but it's It's history and it's statistics.
That's not true.
It is. We used to not have a voice.
We had Cleopatra. We had women in power throughout all of history. There are examples of them.
When were
the first female property owner was in the 1600s in the United States.
When were women allowed to have their own bank accounts?
Women were allowed to have their own bank accounts in what does that have to do with writing? You're changing the topic.
No, I'm not.
You're changing the topic because I'm right. They were allowed to write. They were.
You're the one who brought up female writers. That wasn't the question.
Go ahead. So, sometime in the 1900s, I can't remember the year.
Yeah, it was like in the 1970s.
Yeah,
is when women were allowed to have bank accounts. So when we're talking about
what's happened since we got bank accounts? We own 80% of the world's debt. There's a reason people did things the way they did.
You don't think that women should be able to have their own bank accounts?
I don't think they shouldn't have bank accounts. I think everyone should have the right, and they do. But there's a reason. I think when we look at the past, we have to look at the reason that people did things. And one of the reasons is women are very irresponsible with money. They own 80% of the world's debt, even though they make less money than men.
So did you know that the majority of household finances are regulated and controlled by women?
Yeah, I knew that. We make 80% of consumer buying decisions.
Yeah.
So that's what I said. They spend.
And
that's what I said. They spend money. Because they spend money they don't have.
We do have the money.
Not anymore. I mean, the average woman out of college has $30,000 worth. How much debt do you have? You have to have six figures coming out of med school.
I do have 6 figures of debt,
exactly.
and the student debt. Because
the thing is, in your profession, I mean, on average, women leave the medical profession when they have a kid or within 5 years. So odds are you won't pay it off, and I'm not saying you personally. I hope you do, right? I'm not wishing it one way or another, but statistically, women make their debt someone else's problem.
Men do the same thing.
No, they don't. So they looked at women paying off their debt and men paying off their college debt, and men have been making payments towards it the last 5 years and women haven't.
So it's funny because you just mentioned how women will leave their careers because they have to take care of children, and that probably plays a large role into why they're not able to pay back their student debt compared to men who continue to be a part of the workforce even after they have children. Do you see how those two things might be correlated?
No, because women aren't having kids anymore. That would have been the case, maybe the case before, but now they're not really having children.
We are still having children. That's
on average, it's like 1.5 now. So, I mean, you have one kid, you can put it in daycare, you can still work.
You can put it in daycare.
Sorry, his or her.
Yeah. See, and this is the problem is when we see people as commodities instead of actual people, that's where we run into this thing of I don't care how you feel, you make stupid decisions, instead of taking a nuanced perspective and the complexity of the human experience and recognizing that there are so many things that contribute into these cherry-picked statistics.